We'll call to order the regular meeting of the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners for Tuesday, April 8th, 2014. Good morning, everyone. My name is Langdon Neal. I'm chairman of the board. Seated to my left is Marisol Hernandez, and joining us by phone is Commissioner Richard Cowan. Again, I keep forgetting whether we need to actually have a motion to approve Commissioner Cowan participating by phone. The answer is no. Okay. First thing is the consideration agenda. Any additions or deletions? Hearing none, we'll move to, yes, we do have minutes. Approval of the minutes for March 25, 2014.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Hernandez.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Cowan. Further discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
That'll be the order. We'll move to the Executive Director's report. Mr. Goff, I think this is our first meeting since the election. I'd like to say, and I sound like a broken record, but congratulations again on a good election. I think a particularly challenging election. Number one is a primary. Those are always our most difficult elections.
Yes, they are.
And we also added new technology to the process. And I've been stopped on the street by several people which have just mentioned to me that how much they congratulated me on the new equipment. They liked using it. They thought it was definitely an improvement to the election process. I got all good remarks. Of course, everybody wanted to tell me how to improve it. Again, everyone seemed to focus on that time in the morning and the time it takes to boot up the system and download the information. But that's no surprise to us. We experienced that. But all in all, rave reviews from the public that I've received on the new equipment. So thought I'd pass that on to you before you get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to let you know that I have had meetings with the elected officials, and all of them are very happy about the e-poll book. We had some. We did invite the aldermen and committeemen to review the equipment. Some of them took advantage of it. Some brought in staffers so they knew what was going on. And I think for the November election, we have a debriefing with ES&S on the 28th of this month. There are some items that they found that they want to improve on, and some items that we're working on also. So I think between us and our vendor, I think it'll be a lot easier for this upcoming election.
Excellent.
So we did have one debriefing after the election. We have another one with the first one was just key staff. The next one will be with overall most of our staff to go over what was positive, what was negative. As you said, the primaries are always a rough one.
Yeah.
We're starting a new appointment period for judges. So we're going to start a new recruitment program for judges, something that I'm working on right now. Hope to give you something in writing later on. I have a meeting with the public libraries. I hope they'll be part of the partnership and help us recruiting judges. So something that we're working on, and we'll be able to give something to the board members at the next board meeting.
Excellent.
We have, as you said, we just finished up. We're ready to proclaim. We are going to start working on materials that we'll start handing out to elected officials. A lot of the elected officials are interested in the November election, and a lot are interested in 2015. One of the items that we're getting a lot of questions on is local option for the November 2014 election. So Mr. Scanlon's got the document that he'd like to have the board approve. I've gotten a lot of questions. At one time, do you remember the mayor's office was pushing to dry up a lot of precincts? I think that's coming up for this November, so it's going to be interesting. We may have a lot of local options on the ballot. But overall, the staff, I think, did an excellent job. We had some issues with judges. We had some issues with PPAs. I think I know what went wrong. We'll be able to correct those for the November election.
Excellent.
When you have a low turnout election, you don't have interest in it. We had a lot of judges that didn't even show up. We had a lot of no-shows. So something that we're going to be working on for this November.
As well as our proprietors.
Oh, yeah.
Our polling places.
They just didn't, with all the letters, all the stuff we gave them, just Blue Pass. So it's something that we are going to work. We're going to have a partnership with elected officials on that also. So I think it's going to work out well.
Great.
Lance, has there been any consideration one way or the other whether a PPA, for example, who didn't show up would be reappointed going forward?
No, we are not. People that did not show up that were supposed to, I'm requesting that them not to be put on the list again.
All right, good. I would support that. I think if they didn't, on maybe a tough day, they chose to bail, then we should look elsewhere.
We've had some horror stories with PPAs and judges that did not show up or came in and left, and those were putting together a document. We'll let the board members see, but those people will not be coming back.
Okay. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, it does.
Any questions for Mr. Goff?
No.
Okay. We'll move, Ms. Bateman is in a meeting?
No, Ms. Bateman is ill today
Oh, wow.
on her birthday.
Oh, okay. Now I don't have to work.
But Mr. Allen.
Mr. Allen.
Good morning, Commissioners. To follow up on your remarks, some of the feedback that we've received, emails and correspondence from voters and judges has mirrored what you've heard from personal communications as far as the feedback on the electronic poll books. Overall, all the comments have either been favorable or they've been geared toward how do we make this better. So I think there's consensus, as Mr. Goff mentioned a minute ago, among the staff and with the vendor, that we need to work on the uploads. The morning upload is the most critical issue, making that shorter and anticipating a scenario where, for whatever reason, the judges don't arrive or can't enter the polling place until 4:45. They need to be able to perform that in a very short time span. The debriefing meeting went very well. We covered everything from trucking to polling places to judges. I do have some data I want to share with you in Kelly's absence regarding the judges. We had 1,205 who did not show up on election day.
Both PPAs and judges?
No, this is just judges.
Just judges.
We had approximately 180 PPAs, if memory serves, who did not show up, or but just did not show up on election day. We had 1,205. 40.5% of those were Democratic judges. 59.5%, 717 of those were Republican judges. Similarly, resigned, meaning they called or emailed or gave us some indication in advance. Resigned judges, we had 1,588, and of those, 55.5% were Republican, 44.5% were Democrat. We're going to look further into these to determine how many of these were long-standing or previously appointed judges as opposed to last minute. And we think we could learn some information there. The videographers, by the way, have agreed to express interest in coming back. Part of the debriefing meeting, we covered how we might be able to use additional videos for instructional purposes, whether it's how to set up the equipment in the morning, how to set up the touch screen, working with people in the disability community to reinforce setting up the touch screen. That's a problem that's consistently happened in a handful of precincts where the judges just don't set up the touchscreen equipment, and then we have a voter who's either has to wait a long time or is unsatisfied with having to cast a paper ballot. So we want to address that. The videographers have agreed they want to come back, so there are different, very short videos that we think we can provide.
Jim, those videos, are they, assumed that they would be on a totally voluntary basis, that the judges would view them. There's nothing that we're compelling them.
Well,
Shoot.
if, for example, the one that it urges the judges to use to set up the touchscreen, that is something we'd like to show, or that the Judges Department has indicated they'd like to show in every training session. So it could be very brief, very to the point of just hearing from the voters why this is important to set up this piece of equipment, so that they can cast ballots independently and privately. So that was the
Okay,
idea.
so these are videos that would be shown during the in-person instruction.
Well, they're a mix.
Mix.
Some of them are videos that they could access on election day via the website, so that if they're having a question, maybe different people have different learning styles, so if they have a question, they might be able to turn to the video just kind of as a refresher. Here's a quick view on how to set up the electronic poll book. Here's a quick view on how to set up the touchscreen. So it doesn't have to be a very long video. It's simply, here's how you put in the legs, here's how you turn it up, here's how you can adjust the screen, so forth and so on.
And that would be accessible through the board website.
Yes. So even on election day, hopefully at least one of the judges might have a smartphone. That's been what we've seen lately. And somebody will be able to look that up and access it. One more tool, hopefully. Speaking of the website, it wasn't an issue. This is our first time with having the site hosted off-site with far higher capacity, more firepower, if you will, and there were no issues with the website. It was actually, when we told them to amp it up for the final weekend, it was even faster than it was normally in terms of response. I mean, it was, you entered an address, you had the information you needed.
Do we have any information as to how much it was accessed, how many people accessed it, or how many hits?
No, I don't have the data on that yet.
Okay, but we'll be getting that?
Yes, ma'am. Second to last, provisional ballots. We had, at least since 2006, the highest percentage actually counted under the very liberalized rules that Mr. Scanlon outlined for the board back in September and October. So approximately 55.5%, I want to say, of the ballots counted, either partially or entirely, and that compares to a typical rate of 18 to 22%. Wow. So these rules definitely had a significant impact. I don't have data that breaks down all the different reasons, but I suspect that because out of precinct ballots could be counted in certain contests, that was probably the biggest item. And that's it.
Jim, could we go back to the no-shows among the judges, either resignations or just didn't show up? How many of those, Republican and Democrat, were over-the-counter judges? Are we able to break that out? Because I really think there's three categories. There's the Republican and Democrat judges who were sponsored by the organizations, and then there's the over-the-counter judges who were placed as an R or a D. And I'd be interested to see what the percentages are within those three classifications.
Commissioner, we are too. We'll be going into that further. We just wanted to give you a quick, just the raw data so far, but we'll have to pull the applications and see whether they came in long ago, a short time ago, whether they were signed by committeemen or whether they were over the counter. And we plan to have that data for you because we're interested in avoiding this in the future for obvious reasons.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Allen? No. All right, we'll move on to old business, infrastructure projects and changes.
Still working.
Still,
Chairman.
still ticking off our list.
Yes, sir.
Electronic poll books, we really discussed those. Is there anything else to say about that?
Not at all, Mr. Chairman, not at this time.
Other than say thank you, Judd, for all the staff you threw at us on Election Day, and we're happy with what we bought so far.
That's good. We appreciate that. I appreciate your remarks about people on the street and Mr. Allen's remarks. I think it's great that people are feeling good about the product, and we look forward to continuing and making it better.
Great.
Moving forward. So thank
Great.
you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of Judd. In terms of the time to upload, it seems we're saying that that's a matter of training and experience of the judges in working with the equipment. Judd, are there any mechanical changes that could be made in the equipment that will accelerate that process?
Yes, Commissioner, we're going to look at different ways to reduce the length of time that it takes to do that upload. In addition, you know, in looking at some of the preliminary data, it looks like some of the poll workers kind of stopped, thinking the poll book wasn't doing anything. So we're looking at putting a progress or a status bar on there so that they'll know exactly where they're at in the process as well. So we're going to look at it from a couple different angles to see if we can improve the number of downloads we get on election morning.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So it'll be a combination of both, Commissioner.
Right.
Voting equipment. Anything that we need to talk about?
Right now, Mr. Chairman.
So no issues to discuss with Paige today, other than it was another good performance by Dominion. Thank you. Legislation, Mr. Scanlon.
Unless the commissioners have any questions, I don't have anything to report.
All righty. New business. So we have before, Mr. Scanlon, I'll turn to you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you have before you the tabulated statement of returns and proclamation of results for the March 18th, 2014 general primary. And we simply ask that the board approve and adopt this tabulated statement, and we will then forward these returns to both the Cook County Clerk's Office and the State Board of Elections.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve tabulated statement of returns?
Can I just lodge a complaint about that? I don't know if it's in order or not, so I'm just asking that.
No, it's not in order, but yes, go ahead.
Okay, speaking for Defend the Vote, we would be concerned, and we have submitted a FOIA and have gotten insufficient results as well as insufficient responses from your staff regarding how your provisional votes were counted.
Let me just interrupt you. This is Sharon Maroney from Defend the Vote speaking right now.
Thank you
Go
very
right
much.
ahead, Sharon.
I appreciate that
Yeah.
introduction and apologize for not making it myself.
That's okay.
So the concern that we have is the affidavit that each one of your provisional voter makes affirms that he is a resident of the precinct from which he is voting in. And so you have affidavits that are stating one thing, and if you are then counting that vote, we would like to have that as part of the record, because I believe that you would have an issue where a voter is stating he lives there and either he does or he doesn't. And if he doesn't live there, then he should not have given a ballot in the first place. And I have written an extensive report about this. I'm also extremely concerned that voters may or may not have been made aware that their votes on the different judge positions, as well as on the many tiny referendum that were running through Chicago. You know, I'm not sure even how many votes are involved, because I couldn't get a response from this board in order for me to make a more prepared presentation to you.
Okay. So let me tick off those. So on the first one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but the Illinois Election Code provides the language with specificity that must be contained within the application for a provisional ballot. Is that correct?
It is, Mr. Chairman. But when the General Assembly amended the legislation in Article 18A to provide for the counting or the partial counting of provisional ballots cast in the wrong precinct, they neglected to go back and amend the language of the certification. So, Ms. Maroney is correct in that the language in the certificate, in the affidavit, was not updated when the legislature amended the law to allow for a voter to cast a ballot in the incorrect precinct. But
Yeah.
I don't think that, I doubt that the state's attorney is going to, prosecute individuals on the basis of an outdated affidavit if it happens to be incorrect, merely because they're exercising a right that the General Assembly has now conferred on them, and that is to cast a ballot in an incorrect precinct. So, I would hope that the legislature will go back and update it and correct it as it should have done in the first place.
So
Well, I
this
would
this
just respond
happens.
to that it's actually deeper than that, General Counsel Scanlon. The intention of the law is that provisional voting is in precinct only, and the directions that the election judges receive are very specific. They say that they first must confirm that the address of the voter is in the precinct, and then after they confirm that or do not. And if they cannot confirm it, then they are mandated by the law to send the voter to the correct precinct and send them out of the precinct.
Right.
So it makes an immediate problem in your polling places because the judge here is told by the law, which is supported by 18A 2, which also says that the rules can't override these procedures. These are mandated. So the procedures say the judge has to send the voter out. Now the voter says, I'm going to insist. So now you have a conflict in your election polling places where the voter has a right to, resist the mandated instructions by the judge.
Well, you're mixing a few terms here, but I'll go to Mr. Allen.
The policy of instructing the judges to advise voters to go to the correct precinct has been and remains the same. In fact, to that end, that is why one of the key reasons the board invested in electronic poll books, so that the judges of election would have the means to provide the voter with direction to the correct polling place. And to that end, we had far fewer calls this election as a result of the electronic poll book. Even as a percentage of calls, even if you factor in turnout, for people asking for where is my polling place, or judges calling on behalf of voters, where is this voter's polling place. The primary 4 years ago, we had 240 calls that we just logged downtown, and we had 60 this election. So the goal of the board and what we instruct the judges to do is to get the voter to the correct polling place, because we want to avoid provisional ballots. That being said, it has always been, again, consistently the policy of the board, that if the voter insists that they want to cast a ballot in that wrong precinct, even after being advised that it's the wrong precinct, they have that right. And in the past, and it could be that our records are wrong. The reason for that rule is that our records could be out of sync. They may have registered or updated the registration right about the deadline through the Secretary of State's office or through the mail, and for whatever reason, their record is not correctly reported in our records, or they may have been changed through the canvas, but then it turns out that the change of address was incorrect. So they've always had that right, and we give them that right to insist on voting in the wrong polling place.
Mm-hmm.
But as Mr. Scanlon noted, the rules have changed, as he detailed in September and October, and I don't want to characterize your remarks, but I think you even commented at the time to the board that this was a significant change of direction in the state law.
And is not unusual when there's a significant change in kind of the procedural requirements in the election code, that frequently what I call cleanup legislation is needed, where they don't realize the impact upon another section of the code that's created when yet an additional section is amended. So sometimes the draftsmanship with a statute that's as complicated, and I say this all the time in many different contexts, as the election code, that amendments to one section that they won't realize it affects another section, and then subsequently there'll be the need for what I call legislative cleanup. This is the case where legislative cleanup is needed, and we're going to point it out, and I'm sure it'll be done.
And the other thing, too, to keep in mind is the statute, when it was amended, provided that ballots cast in the incorrect precinct would be counted in accordance with rules adopted by the State Board of Elections.
Yes.
So the legislature gave the State Board specific rulemaking authority to implement these new provisions. The State Board did adopt emergency rules prior to the March election. They are now in the process, I believe, of adopting and writing permanent rules. And all of those rules will go before the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, which is a legislative oversight panel.
Yes.
So they get a chance to review the State Board's rules. I would hope they would take into account any changes they may need to make to the statute itself in the process of reviewing those rules.
Yes, and surely it's not this board's fault that these emergency rules went into place. And in fact, we did an investigation and proved that the Illinois State Board of Elections did not do their duty and properly inform the voters. They did not properly change any of the election judge manuals, so judges were not properly trained. And we asked them to give notice at the last minute, and they did not act on that request. So I'm familiar with the different problems that we have in implementing this. However, the fact remains, we have a process right now that I have actually already written a response to these notes, these comments, as Mr. Scanlon has referenced. So I don't know how many provisional ballots there were in Chicago out of precinct. I don't know how many people took a false affidavit, and as an election rights organization,
It's not
I
a
am
false
concerned.
affidavit.
It is. If they said they live there and they don't, it's false.
But please,
It doesn't
Sharon,
mean
I think you have to be careful in how you characterize it.
Well, it's funny because the rules apply sometimes. And the issue of wanting people to vote, I care a lot about that.
I know you do.
And I care a lot about how the polling place is managed. And if
Yes.
you're training election judges, and what I did is I did a 4-county assessment of how these emergency rules were put in place. And I attempted to vote provisionally in Lake County, Cook County, McHenry County, and in Kane County, because I live in an area that has 4 counties in it, so I could do that. Everybody reacted differently, and the different election authorities interpreted how to implement the rules differently. And the reason that you have that problem is because the rules contradict the law. Now, Catherine Schultz said, absolutely not. If you do not live in this county, you cannot vote here. Other people said, well, you can vote, but your ballot won't count.
Are you saying that you applied to vote in 4 different locations?
Yes. But I didn't fill out any paperwork. I did what the voter is allowed to do. The law states if I have not voted...
I think you want to think about what you just said.
No, I don't think so. I didn't do anything illegal. The law states if I haven't voted yet, I'm allowed to request a provisional ballot. So I went in and I said, may I vote provisionally? And went through, never filled out any paperwork. Okay? It's just
Were you intentionally misleading an election official?
absolutely not. I was intentionally requesting to exercise my right, which was to vote a provisional ballot.
In 4 different locations, in 4 different counties?
And I got turned down in one. I went to the next one. I got turned down. I went to the next one. So I went through the process as is legally prescribed, and I documented it, and I gave my answers to the Illinois State Board of Elections.
But did you try to vote first?
No.
And then were you denied? You just immediately asked for a provisional ballot?
Well, the law says I can insist. I can walk in the polling
But no,
place
first
and
you
say
have to
insist.
attempt to vote, and then
No, there's
exhaust
nothing in
your...
the law that says that.
Wow.
It says I have to go in, and you see, it's even more dangerous, because I had the right to be in those polling places, even though I didn't have poll watching credentials, because I was a voter that lived in that district that could insist. It's true.
In all 4 districts, you lived in all 4 districts and had a right to vote in all 4
Barrington
districts.
Hills has 4 districts, honestly.
Yeah, but listen, Madam Chair, this is the public comment section. I'm getting into a dialogue with you, which is what I'm not supposed to do, so stop me, please.
Well, I think we have heard the issues and the concerns, and we've also heard about how we intend to bring the issues to the attention of the legislature and the State Board of Elections. And at this point, I think we have said everything we could, and I would like to go ahead and make a motion to adopt and approve the tabulated statement of the returns and proclamation of the results of the canvass of the election returns for the March 18, 2014 general primary election.
Thank you.
Second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moved and properly seconded. Further discussion, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That'll be the order. We'll move now to item B, which is revised 2015 election information pamphlet and calendar.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, you have before you a revised 2015 election information pamphlet and calendar. It makes some what I would characterize as minor corrections. It also attempts to clarify the issue about residency going into the 2015 election, which is the first election after the redistricting that occurred in 2012. And there have been some questions that have come up. And what I've suggested is that an additional sentence be added in the footnote, footnote 1, it appears on page 4 of the revised calendar, and it deals with residency not just for the 2015 election, but also for the 2019 election, which would be the subsequent election. And it clarifies that if a person is elected in 2015 and they run from a ward, an old ward that is part of the new ward, and they are elected in 2015, they would then have up until 1 year before the 2019 election to move into the new ward, to establish residency in the new ward. So that would be, they would have to have residency within the new ward by February 26, 2018, which is 1 year before the February 26, 2019 election. So we added that to clarify and address some questions we've gotten on that.
So I'm sorry, you don't have to be a resident of the ward in order to run for election.
In 2015,
In 2015.
you must reside in a ward that is a part of the new ward.
Okay.
So I'll take an example. If you have the first ward, you live, prior to the redistricting, you lived in Old Ward 1.
Mm-hmm.
After the redistricting, Old Ward 1 is now a part of, say, Ward 2
Mm-hmm.
or Ward 3.
Mm-hmm.
You can run in Ward 1 or in Ward 3 or in any other ward, any other new ward that contains a part of the old Ward 1.
Isn't that an issue for actually Ward 1, where no part of the new Ward 1 is in the old Ward 1?
If no part of it is in
Is that
the,
right?
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Because in that case, the individual will not be eligible to run in the new Ward 1.
Okay.
Right. Right.
Okay.
I move to adopt and approve the 2015 election information pamphlet and calendar.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That'll be the order.
Thank you.
Item C, Mr. Scanlon.
You have before you a draft of the 2014 local option guidelines. And I think as Mr. Goff indicated earlier, there is some interest in local options for the November 2014 general election. And I would ask for your approval of these guidelines.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That'll be the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. Anything else from your legal status report?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We do not have a financial report. We'll then move to the public comment section. Terry, how are you?
Fine. Where I voted, they liked the new equipment, and it took quite a while when I was there, but it was because everybody was changing off so that they would all know how to use it. And on not this election, but the one before, which was very busy, and I was there, and a couple came in and weren't allowed to vote, and this man said, "This is the third precinct that we've been through." And I couldn't get over and talk to them before they stormed out, so,
That's why we put this in place.
yeah. So I hope this takes care of that problem, that the first precinct they went to could tell them where they were really supposed to be.
Well, thank you for your feedback, Terry. Anyone else? Sharon, you're into your second 3-minute. So.
Well, you know what, seeing as I hold different roles, I actually brought different hats today. And this is my hat for Defend the Vote.
Okay.
And so I'm going to wear that for a brief moment, or just keep it on my lap if you don't mind, because I'm not meaning to trivialize, but I do know that I represent different things, and they're all important. So just to make comment, I still don't know how many out-of-precinct ballots were cast, and I would like to have that information
You will.
because
You will.
I think it's important.
You will.
And so
Did
that was the
you
main
make
thing.
did you make a formal request for that, a written request?
I did.
Yes, you did.
And that was forwarded to the
Ms. Agnew.
FOIA officer, Joan Agnew.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we had requested access to items on the agenda, prior, so that maybe I could have read those guidelines or something. Is it possible to know if that's going to be given to us or not?
Well, I think packets that the board has are prepared, and they could be made available after the meeting. But there's nothing that requires us to produce them before, I believe. And sometimes where we just don't have them in advance,
There's meet frequently.
yeah.
Okay, that would be perfect. Afterwards would not be ideal, but it certainly would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, quickly here, switching to GOP side, and this would relate to the election judges. I want to thank the board for promoting 4 judges in the early voting sites, and also applaud the initiative to start advertising in the libraries. We would like to have the notifications for our judges to sign up sent out immediately this month, because really the enrollment period for election judges, the sooner the better. And regardless to who becomes, we're working with, what we want to do is we want to bring the electronic side of offering election judges out in the precincts to actually be able to enroll online. And, that would be a much better relationship between us to be able to transfer data, because the data that I've been given, I had, one of the things you may not be aware of, but we sent out a questionnaire to 2,500 election judges in Chicago and another 4,000 in Cook County. And the questionnaire just closed yesterday. We got 400 responses in Cook County, or in Chicago, and I guess it was a little over 850 in suburban Cook. So we were really thrilled by the responses. And one of the questions we asked is, why do judges serve? And the question that was overwhelmingly selected was to serve their country. So there's a real feeling of patriotism among the people for the reason that they become a judge. The least likely was the money, which I guess you guys would find humorous and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at that data, I also found that some of the poll books were very positive comments about that, and we'll go ahead and give you some of this information. But we want to start getting our judges enrolled immediately, and we also want to have an electronic process, and so how to get that done. If you're going to send out letters, you know, the legislature provides funds for it from this end. Can we get those letters sent out right away? And can we put a flyer in there that might also state, you know, we'd like you to help us recruit, or do something from the party that would, you know, both the Democrats and the Republicans maybe would want to say something in there, but let's economize and get the process for recruiting right away, because the last minute stuff just doesn't work. And not only doesn't it work, it also costs you guys a lot of money.
Well, Sharon, your characterization of us doing quote, last minute stuff, I think that is a mischaracterization, because I do think we do what we need to do on a timely basis and in accordance with the statute and in accordance with our rules. So you have a tendency to throw these comments out, and I don't think that's an accurate characterization of what we do and how we do it.
Didn't mean to offend that or to imply that. What I mean to say is that it's much better if we start immediately rather than waiting till June, July. The sooner we start the recruitment process, the better. I have 30 years of recruitment experience. And also by going into the exact neighborhood, you see, it gives us time. If we get enrollment online so people can go into their libraries and sign up there, if we find out in June that we have gaps in these communities that people have not enrolled, that provides more time to go into those communities and individually target.
And I don't think that prohibits you, though, correct me if I'm wrong, from actually going out also in attempting to recruit. And I think you're welcome to go, you and your organization, to go out throughout the city in the areas which have maybe least participation, on the south side, on the west side, northwest side. And, you know, that could also be an option for you and your organization to go out and recruit to places like South Chicago, West Side, Humboldt Park.
And one of the great ways to do that is to post a help wanted notice inside each precinct. And when we're not able to do that, to contact the precincts and say, do you have a suggestion on where we can put this notice up? Because that would be the most efficient way to contact. We don't have a big budget.
Well, the precinct is, we're there one day.
Right, but there's schools, you know, you're always going to a location and you have
Well,
a
we have
point
to,
of contact.
well, that involves, I mean, we don't know if schools are going to allow, you know, that's a whole nother
We have to be
process.
opt-in, I agree, yeah.
Right,
Be an opt-in
right.
thing,
But
let's give them the
what
option.
I'm thinking is, you know, and the thought just occurred to me, I think it would be great if you personally, you know, and those in your organization would make the effort to go personally out to recruit in these underserved areas. You know, we all have the same goal of getting out the vote and getting judges, qualified judges, and I just think that, you know, a partnership with you to go out there would be great.
That's exactly what I'm here to do. And I think if we could start that partnership in April and not wait until June, it would be great. So that was one of the objectives.
Okay, well,
that
and
we
let
did
us
that.
know when you know, intend to go out to these areas and.
Well, I would
you know.
like to go out by precinct by sending flyers and mailings and information to the different locations.
And I'm just
asking
thinking,
them to opt in.
personally, might be better to spread the word, so just a thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a great thought, thank you.
We'll continue to work with you, Sharon.
But, you know, it's kind of hard to go and stand in a corner in a neighborhood and say, anybody want to be a judge? That's not really a good recruitment strategy.
There are meetings, there are organizations, there are meetings that you can go to find out about local organizations, and you can go to those meetings if they hold them during the day or in the evening on weekends. I think that, you know, there's a lot of community organizations out there in the underserved areas. And
the interesting thing is the law is so specific. I have to have a Republican in every single precinct. And the best way to get that is to post help wanted in the precinct by precinct. It is. I could go to those organizations, you're right, if I would get an invitation. It's very labor
well,
intensive.
we've just told you that it's almost impossible. Precinct is there for exists for one day. It exists. It could move. You know,
Well,
we don't know if it's locked for the other 364 days of the year, and it just opens for that day. So you know, it's.
Well, I guess I could spend the money and, you know, and send a letter to each of the precincts and ask them to do that. But I thought it would be more cooperative to work alongside the board rather than go around.
And we will continue to cooperate with you in this effort.
And so the,
We really got to wrap it up now, Sharon.
Yes.
You've had a lot of time. You've tried to be,
as usual, you're always gracious. Thank you.
thank you. Well, I'll just ask you one question out of curiosity. What is the third hat that you wear?
Well, this is actually for the Election Judge Association, and thank you for asking,
okay.
which is bipartisan.
Gotcha.
And even
How
though,
can you be,
That's what I wanted to ask, Mr. Buff. Just ask.
I got another meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make one observation, that I think the board and the staff worked closely with both Republican and Democratic organizations this last election and eased the statutory deadlines for committeemen to appoint judges, and then gave committeemen preference where there were vacancies even beyond the statutory limit. So I think the board did go out of its way in a positive sense to facilitate the appointment of judges for both Republican and Democratic organizations. And I think that was a positive effort that I hope Sharon, you, and the others recognize as such.
She said absolutely. And on that positive note,
Move to adjourn.
we have anything else, Mr. Scanlon?
No, I just
Oh, we
wanted-
have to sign these before we adjourn?
Correct, and also just to note that there's no need for executive session today.
Thank you. Seem to have gotten lost.
It's gonna be there in another week.
It worked well. You know what?
Yes,
I did sign this one.
Okay.
I don't know if you,
This is your copy though,
I
right?
know.
Okay.
So just in case he needs it.
Then I
that's
want one that you signed.
San Francisco, so
Oh.
if we could.
Sounds good to me. Let's see, San Francisco.
Yeah, I can make that one.
That might be a solid. Yeah, it might be a lot. All right, we'll recess until the call of the chair for the next meeting. I'm pointing to July. What's wrong with me? Whew.
Anxious to get ahead.
Which will be, we'll call the chair.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Enjoy the day, Richard.
Thank you very much, Lang and Meredith.